Hello and welcome to the Built in the Bronx podcast. I am your host, Maximilian Hill, and today we have a very special guest. Timothy Lee is a serial fintech entrepreneur. He is the founder of Alchemy, the founder of Max Decisions, and his current venture, LendAPI. In addition to conquering the fintech world, Tim is a lecturer at USC, Southern California. Go Trojans. Tim, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you today?
Doing well, Maximilian. Max, good to see
Very
you again. That was a lofty intro. I appreciate you as always.
So, real quick, I saw you just had a vacation on the other side of the world. Just tell us quickly about that.
Yeah. I love to travel with my family. I've got family, four kids. Whenever we can, we usually pick a location, around the globe and just go there and see what that part of the world is about. So this time we went to Indonesia, had a great time in Bali and experienced anywhere from rice farming all the way to visiting some of the really old temples that was built 500 years ago. This is very eye-opening for the kids as well.
Very nice. A
Yeah.
little change of pace for you, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To get out from behind these screens, just a little a break. Yeah, I'm actually going to Dubai in a couple weeks for the World Blockchain Summit, which is real. I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I've heard. Good. Be safe out there, hopefully we'll see another episode of your podcast recorded straight from Dubai. That'll be really exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's we're hoping to do that. Yes. So tell me a little bit about your latest venture. I know you've had several,
Yeah.
very impressive. I know a lot of my followers and a lot of students I work with would be very interested in learning
Mhm.
about your career. But yeah, would love to know about your latest venture.
Yeah, the latest venture is LendAPI. You can find more about it on lendapi.com. And this is very interesting. I built a bunch of these in my career, and the ability for us to launch something quickly, it just gets faster and easier and less expensive. There's a lot of tools out there that can help us, the engineering team, to get something launched very quickly. So this one, it took us a very short amount of time, and we're actually revenue positive, profitable, with some really good customers on our platform that constantly give us a feedback. So this is a very enjoyable session, and I have a really good partner on this project as well with a good team. So this is all about digital onboarding experience for banks. If you click on Apply Now button, if you will, at Bank of America, for example, our technology could power all of that. But the unique side of this is it's all configurable, right? You don't have to call us for any customization or anything like that. Log in, you can piece together the onboarding flow, the fields, the third-party data providers you want to call, build your own decision trees, and move applications forward all the way to assigning of the application. So whatever you're trying to sell on this platform. So, and it's free to use for 30 days, and the cost is 1/10 or 1/20th of what our competitors can able to charge, because we built a product as opposed to a customization platform. So
Very
that's
exciting.
mhm.
I think it's such a fascinating industry, fintech, because it's like almost like the merging of two massive industries, financial services and technology. And you have a background in both of them.
Yeah. So academically speaking, I was trained as an engineer. College, graduate school, fell into high tech at the beginning of it, and quickly switched over to banking technology back in the days, 20 years ago. Kind of just fell in love with it. Know a bunch of people in this industry. I think we're going to talk about networking as one of the topics here. It's super important to get to know folks. However, way possible, right? There's a lot of new technologies now that you can plug yourself into a specific industry, just learn a whole lot about it from people and events and things like that. But yeah, so I've been playing around with fintech for as far as I know, for a long time.
Yeah, you mentioned networking, and I
Mhm.
think it's never been easier to meet interesting people with platforms like LinkedIn. I mean, that's how we met.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We met many years ago. I think we were speaking on the same topic or had the discussion in some kind of a thread, and we kind of
I think
connected. That's how
it
our
was like
conversation.
the height of 2020, the pandemic.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And I have a lot of stories around that. But
Yeah.
the powers of some of the tools that we use today, X, LinkedIn, even some of the off professional platforms like Instagram or Snapchat, TikTok for whatever it's worth, are all really good places for you, generically speaking, to build a personal brand, to talk about what you're passionate about, right? Whether you're working on a project as an entrepreneur or a specific sector in the business, if you're working on credit risk, fraud, building mobile apps, right? The ability for you to talk about your passion, right, is important, and it gets noticed. And uh, it's who you know at the end of the day. This is the old adage, and not what you know. What you know is important, but who you know is even more important. So having platforms like LinkedIn is a super powerful tool. I kid you not, I do all my sales on LinkedIn. 100% of my sales on
Comes from
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
100%. 100%. I've been cultivating that platform for since 2006, almost 20 years now. Can you imagine, right? So build up a good network. I know a lot of people in person, but I know a lot more people now virtually around the world. I know you're going to touch upon that because you're going to Dubai in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks, right? Using that platform. And then that is the platform for you to get to know people first and foremost, understand the latest technology trend. I know you have an important job at Lehman College there. And whatever you learn in your college and your career, academically speaking, that's great foundation, but keeping up on LinkedIn on what people really uses to build their platforms and whatnot, that's also important, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think the combination of the two, very important.
Right.
Uh, yeah, one of the things I know is I've been blessed to be born and raised in New York, just outside of New York City. So
Right.
proximity to big cities will give you an edge. And I think these days in careers, any edge that you can have,
Hmm.
and that you need to utilize. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking
100.
of the software engineer job market,
Mm.
I read an article on Wired.com. They were talking about why it's become such a it's an obstacle course, and it's I mean, I don't want to say unfair because no one likes to hear that word unfair,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's becoming very the power pendulum is swinging back towards companies and employers.
Hmm.
I think workers had a couple of years of wage growth and had their pick of jobs really, and then they had the remote work leverage, but it's getting tougher now. So what I
Yeah.
want to know from you, I mean, you've done a lot of hiring, right?
Right.
So walk me through your hiring process. What is it that you look
Mhm.
for in a good candidate? Do you value skills, values, integrity? Walk me through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll start with my personal example, right? When I was in high school, college, that was in the mid to late 90s. So I had the opportunity to build some startups actually back in the days. If you know how to fog a mirror, I feel like somebody will pick you up, right? As to join as a startup. Those days are long gone. Um, uh, you know, being able to program or even do some SQL commands, right? That's table stakes. Everybody should know about all of that. So what sets you apart today? Let's go back even further to my graduate work at USC. I'm teaching there, but I also graduated from USC as well, Southern California. I wasn't looking for salary, right? I was looking for experience. That was
Mm-hmm.
important to me than anything else in the world. I know I was able to solve some problems, academically speaking, in college, but I know for a fact that none of the stuff that I learned is probably practiced out there in the industry. So I took any opportunity that I could to just get in. I was trained as an engineer. I certainly didn't get uh, to be some kind of a software engineer level two, making 200 grand a month, a
Yeah,
year,
right.
right? At Facebook or Meta or anything like that. It existed back then. I got a job basically managing Intel supply chain. They call me out of the blue, right, while I was just about to graduate from SC, And I took it. I said, you know what? Let me just get in, right? You, I'm not going to do any janitorial work, but let me get in to see what these companies about, right? As soon as I stepped in, my manager, Darrell Riley, still remember his name, 20 years ago, right? Said, Tim, here is the program that we use to manage Intel supply chain for the non-CPU, basically all the communications chipsets. And I looked at it, it's 30,000 lines of code. So I sign up. They didn't tell me it was going to be a computer software engineering work. You got thrown right into it. And Daryl said, I'm the only one that knows how to run it. I'm going on sabbatical this week. If you have any questions about this stuff, you got 5 days to ask me. So I don't think I slept for the entire week, line by line, compile by compile. And you can imagine what kind of compiler we had 20 years ago. And it was a specific language that's no longer being used. It was an ancient language I've never got exposure to, right, in college or graduate school. So you just roll with it. But the point of it is that get in, especially now, any kind of position, product management, product marketing, UI, UX, CX design, all of that stuff is programming, right? It's probably high level programming now, where you're going to use Figma, for example,
Mhm.
Framer, for example, some of the design tools, Lucid Charts, but it's still programming, it's still logic, right?
Yeah.
So at Lehman, computer science, we're probably teaching kids how to do arrays, C++, maybe some .NET work, but it's good training to get people to understand fundamental logic, how computer works. But when you get into the real world, it may not be a sexy computer science to, I don't think those titles even exist anymore. It's product manager, right? It's product manager at Google. You go
Mhm.
in there and you manage how Gmail works. And they will not let you touch any lines of code when you get in, for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
For sure.
You're
Right.
not
My
going to let
service is
some
kind of
rookie.
unique. No,
Yeah.
you're gonna look at it, you're gonna be a disciple, right? So going back to your second part of the question, what we hire is people with tenacity. Everything else is BS. You're gonna learn everything here once you get in, right? Our coding style, our coding language, right? Our design system, our design choices, right? If you're willing to take criticism and be humble and have tenacity, you can learn anything, right? I think you and I and a lot of your students in Lehman probably speaks multiple languages. That's a unique competitive advantage, right?
Yeah.
So you
That's
leverage all of that.
one of the beautiful things about New York is there's hundreds of languages. Yeah.
Right. Multicultural to the T, right? So leverage that. That's everybody's competitive advantage, right? So you got C++, you got JavaScript, you got Python, you got Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, whatever, right? That's
Yeah.
all here to the same in my books, right? The logical process is what the students at USC or Lehman kind of comes away with, right? The ability to kind of think through a problem, to think deeply, right? And with a little bit of tenacity, you can go, and networking.
Yeah.
Anybody listen to this podcast, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, please go build one. If you don't know how to do it, please call Max.
Yeah.
He will help you out,
You
right?
got a
That's
great
super
LinkedIn
important.
profile. My friend Janayat, I think
Uh-huh.
last I checked, had Janayat. He's got I think 40,000 followers. And
There
I
you
asked
go.
him, how did you build such a following? He said 100 comments a day on
That's right.
people that I knew in my network, but also people that I wanted to meet. And
That's
you
right.
mentioned tenacity, and I keep finding that this is a common theme in some of the most successful people that I know. He's a wrestling champion, right? And wrestlers, they know the grind. It's just something. This is the weirdest thing.
That's right.
I haven't yet met a wrestler who I don't think isn't enjoying career success. And
That's right.
the
You
other thing you
mentioned it.
mentioned,
Yeah, go ahead.
you mentioned about when you first started out. Um, one of my mentors, he said he graduated from an Ivy League school. And he
Mm,
said when he first got into his first, real computer science job, they had to send him to remedial courses because his skills were so weak. And this is
right.
a graduate of an Ivy League school,
That's right.
supposed to be one of the best, brightest, but it just goes to show you there's always I think a little lag, and you really learn it when, there's actual money at stake, and then when you
That's
have
right.
skin in the game, because there's a difference between, okay, I have to write this code for an A, or I have to write this code or I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
you know?
Yeah. It's all about problem solving
Yeah.
here or at school, right? At school, every single course is about problem solving. Uh, it, to get a degree or get a diploma. Here in the real world, it's again problem solving. Doesn't matter what kind of coder you are or levels of competency you have in computer science, computer programming, if you will, software engineering. If you don't understand the client's pain points, if you don't listen to their feedback, if you don't find a way to kind of get the most efficient way to solve people's problems, it doesn't really matter. Um, so the listening skill, I know we talk about this all the time, is super important, right? And you may think you have to write 10,000 lines of code to solve their problem, but at the end of the day, it could be a couple hundred lines of code.
Yeah.
What they want is this, but what um, could solve their 80% of their pain point is probably this, right? So the ability to understand what they're going through, understand and digest their pain point is super important. And code is just means to an end. But to get to understanding their pain point, my recommendation to my students certainly is to just get in somewhere. It could be a analyst one making $50,000, $60,000 a year. So be it, right? Get in, understand what each department is going through, right? And fish around. If you go to JP Morgan Chase, if you go to Meta, right, they have internal HR systems that say, hey, you know what? We're going to rotate you through all these departments from accounting all the way
Yeah.
to core engineering. And all these departments needs computer science people.
I have to say, a couple of my friends worked at places where they did like rotations and they got
Right,
exposed to different portions of the business.
right.
I've never had that. And I could just only imagine how valuable that is,
That's right.
because you really just, because people in different departments view the business from their vantage point. And
That's right.
if you never get to see it from
That's
you know,
right.
their behind their laptop or screen, it's hard
That's
for
right.
you to really understand where they're coming from. But
That's
I think
right.
companies would be wise to, rotate people around. And
Yep.
also you get to dabble a little bit and say, okay, I don't like this, but I do like this, right?
That's right.
It
That's
helps
right.
people
That's
be
right.
more content in their career.
That's
Yeah.
right. And there are some really evergreen industries out there. No shame to work for the government, right? There's a lots of software engineering jobs at what is it, job.gov, right? And there's no shame in working in national defense.
Yeah.
There's tons of jobs that is engineering and science related, right? And I don't want to say they will take anybody, but that's a great entry point for you to learn, one spectrums of a particular industry. And once you get into these larger organizations, whether you're JP Morgan Chase, Goldman, or Meta or Intel, the problems are all the same. They all have accounting issues, HR issues, engineering issues, process issues, automation. And if you're entrepreneur minded, I know that's a big thing at Lehman. You will find a couple of these things, right? And the patterns will emerge, and you can step out after a couple of 3, 4 years of corporate life and build your own startup and solve the same issues and make a lot of money because they still have, it's all made by people and they all have the exact same issues. Process automation of any sorts, any of these large Fortune 500 companies, there's still a problem there today,
Yeah.
you know.
I agree. If they could just get in any by hook or by crook,
That's
right?
right.
Even if it's not a pure software engineering role, right? Just get a product manager. You mentioned like product manager. Now you're learning about the product, right?
That's right.
And I've been through a merger and acquisition. I've been laid off, and what I learned was there's two kinds of employees who are safest: revenue generating employees. So you're talking salespeople, right?
Yep.
And people with product knowledge, right? those are the two most valuable employees. I try to
Right.
share that with my friends and the students that we work with, because
That's
everyone else is just a cost, really.
that's
Uh,
right.
yeah. So
Yeah,
product manager is really popular.
yes, yes. Especially now, no shame on computer engineers or software engineers. They're dime a dozen.
Yeah,
So many of them out there now, right? Here and internationally. But understanding that product and how that could solve people's pain point, which is the same thing as saying revenue generating, right? That can never be outsourced anywhere. You got to learn it. And the best way to learn it is just get in somewhere. I tell my students, get yourself into the biggest company size-wise you can get your hands on. Doesn't matter
yeah,
what it is, right? Then you can expose to a whole spectrums of humanity, good, bad, and ugly, and all the problems and all of these large companies, billion-dollar companies have. They all have the exact same problem.
they do. Yeah.
You may, if you're lucky, if you're entrepreneur minded, you may meet your co-founder there.
Yes.
And both of you guys, three of you guys can step out and build a company. You
So
know,
you've built and successfully exited from several ventures, and tell me about your process for, because you mentioned you might find a co-founder, right? I
right.
know a prominent investor. I listened to his audio book the other day. He said, whenever I think he's a venture capitalist. So whenever he's considering a company to invest in, he always looks into the background of the co-founding team. And he said,
Mhm.
if they just met at a networking event, it's a no go. He's like, but if they work together for years, he's like, that's a good sign. So tell me about your process, because it's
Yeah,
a really important decision, because once you make it, it's very difficult to it's not something that you could just say, oh, you know.
that's right. All of my co-founders I've worked with, whether it's in the company or have worked on a strong project, where both of us or all three, but whatever, right, learn each other's personality, our strengths and weaknesses, the buttons that we press, to get a
Yeah, dude,
promotion,
personality is a big deal.
right? That's super important. And there's tons of books written about how to pick a co-founder, right? But I think the ability to have to work with somebody before you become a co-founder is super important. This is almost like a relationship. You got to date somebody for multiple years before you can make that commitment, if that's still a thing with young people nowadays.
I know.
Right, but the ability, the opportunity to work with somebody in that kind of a deep and entrenched way is absolutely a plus when you want to start a company with somebody. I've had my failures and successes, and I want to say all the failures are people that I met but never really worked together, even though they may have resources to dump into a project. It's never a good ending. It just so happened to be that way. Um, but yeah, that's a interesting observation there.
Any books that have impacted you that you might recommend to an intern?
Hmm. Um, any book, learn how to
Again,
read.
let's just say for a young person who's trying to get their, foothold in the tech industry.
Yeah, so the last book I read, still have a couple of hundred pages finished, is Elon Musk's biography. Um, the I learned a lot from that book. Uh,
Fascinating guy.
yeah, it's an interesting book, and I learned a lot about how he creates businesses. It's very unique. Whether that works for everybody, doubtful, but he created an opportunity for himself in every turn, right? He's got plenty of failures and a lot of successes as well. And prior to that, it was the book about Steve Jobs, his biography as well. Um, that's a different era, different type of approach to business. But if you look at both of these books, and if you look at how these two people have succeeded, it's not by themselves, right? Elon might say or come off as a solo founder, but he's got tons of co-founders. If you read his book, every page's got a different name to it,
The United States government.
right? Whether it was good pairing or if a bad pairing, you always have to work with high caliber people. right?
Yeah.
Same with Steve, right? Steve Jobs didn't succeed by himself, but not by a long stretch. He's got teams behind teams behind teams. Wozniak was just one of the many teams that was successful. But if you look at both of these people, they have a completely different way of motivating people
Yeah.
on two different spectrums, right? They're all crazy, but
They are all crazy.
right?
Yes.
It's all a spectrum of crazy, but it's like people say, marriage is the single most important decision you make in your life. I think finding a co-founder in every stage is one of the most important
It's like
decisions.
a marriage. It really is. I
Hmm.
I read the bio about Elon Musk as well. And the thing that stood out most to me was I think it was during 2008 and times were really tough.
Hmm.
And he was literally showering in a public pool. Uh
Uh-huh.
and then it was tough. Like there was, and then it just goes to show you uh the level that these guys are, of what they're willing to sacrifice and what how far they are willing to go to keep the dream alive.
Right,
You
right. And they they're both, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk came out of a kind of a harsh family environment, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Steve Jobs is adopted, and Musk had at least according to him, had a pretty rough childhood and relationship with his father. Um, Going back to some of the earlier conversation we both had, some of the younger generation of folks, uh, have an interesting retrospect or expectation coming out of college, right? They all wish $200,000 jobs, and won't get that.
I
Some
actually do know a couple who got 200, but that's not the
that's great for that's not the norm. Certainly
not the
not for
norm.
me, and certainly not for Elon or Steve, right? They were
Wasn't for
washing
me.
toilets and whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the goal, right? It's what they want to do in the next 5, 7, 10, 20 years. Think about what you want to do. And the starting point may not be that $200,000 job working at Apple. It doesn't happen, right? You look at Y Combinator, they have 40, 50,000 applications every year. They select maybe 1.5%, right? It's tougher than some of the Ivy Leagues out there.
Yeah.
So set your goals, and you may not start, at at a
As a
loft,
millionaire,
sort of
yeah.
a,
But
TikTok kind of a job. You may start from, as a analyst one.
and then you
That's
work your way up.
right. That's right. That's right.
And
That's always been the case. There's no shortcuts.
who was the person? I forget who it was, but they mentioned, I think it was in Tim Ferriss's book Tribe of Mentors. And they
Mhm.
said one of the guys said when you're first starting out, because one of the questions that Tim asked is, what advice would you give a recent college graduate who's trying to break into industry?
Yep.
And the guy said, it's really difficult if you have student loan debt, but try not to focus on the salary more than it's more important that you're learn the first 2 years you're learning valuable skills and you're also working for a good leader.
That's right. Yeah.
And it is a struggle if you have student loan debt, which is a whole topic for another day. I could talk about that for
Yep.
for days. But that's what I try to advise some of our students. Yes, it's important that you make money. Yes, more money is better than less money. But I say the most important thing is learning those skills early on because that is what will get you those big raises later on. I
That's
think.
right. 100%. And when you get there, whatever there is, I will say to folks, whatever opportunity presents itself, always raise your hand. There will be internal teams that say, "Hey, we need somebody to work on this," even if you don't understand what it is or you think you lack the skill set. Raise your hand, get involved. When you show up, more than likely 80% of people on that project don't know what they're doing either, right?
Yeah.
But for you to raise your hand and get involved and learn and get exposed, at the end of the day, it's not the computer's language. It's not some bizarre server setting. There is a problem, whether they couldn't process a file on time, or some transactions were missing, or they couldn't automate a couple of things here and there, right? It's the same kind of a thing, right? And using the computer language and whatever it might be to solve that problem, that's that's just the means to an end,
Yeah.
right? Raise your hand, get involved, meet people. It'll pay dividends, like you said, Max.
Very good. Tim, last question.
Yeah.
Uh, if you had a billboard on the Bronx Expressway and it could say anything that you wanted, but 10 words or less, what would it be?
Just do it.
All right. I like it. And lastly, if any of our students wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, this will be a homework, right? I'm not going to say what it is. Find me on LinkedIn.
Google,
Yeah,
not Google. Search on LinkedIn, search Timothy Lee,
that's right.
and
Yep,
then your latest venture is LendAPI, correct?
that's right. Yep, look me up, connect with me. I'm happy to have conversations with anybody and your students. I'd love to help them out.
Timothy Lee, thank you so much for coming on the Built in the Bronx podcast.
Max, pleasure as always. Thank you, and safe travels to Dubai.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to connect. It's going to be a great trip. Have
You
a good
got
one,
it.
Tim.
You too. Thank you.